The photograph was of a baby I had never seen before. I was standing in my own attic, surrounded by 23 years of accumulated life. Christmas decorations, tax documents, my daughter's old soccer trophies, and I was holding a picture of an infant I didn't recognize. The baby was wrapped in a hospital blanket, pink stripe along the edge. There was a date stamped in the corner. September 14th, 1998. That was 3 days after my daughter Riley was born. But this wasn't Riley. I knew my daughter's newborn face better than I knew my own reflection. I'd studied those first photos 1,000 times. The curve of her nose, the way her left ear folded slightly at the top, the birthmark on her right shoulder blade, small, shaped like a crescent moon. This baby had none of that. Different nose, different ears, no visible birthmark. And yet, written on the back of this photograph in my wife's handwriting I'd been reading for 18 years, were 2 words that made my chest tighten. Our girl. I didn't move for probably 3 minutes. Just stood there in the dust and the heat of the attic, holding this photograph like it might detonate. Before I continue, I need you to understand something important. I am not a paranoid man. I'm an architect. I design buildings. I work with blueprints and specifications and structural integrity reports. My entire career is built on precision, accuracy, and making sure things are exactly what they appear to be. When I married Vanessa in 2006, I did so believing I understood exactly who she was. Graceful, intelligent, devoted to family, the kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthday and organized charity fundraisers and made sure our daughter Riley never missed a piano lesson. When our daughter was born in September 1998, I held her in the delivery room. I cut the cord. I watched them place her in my wife's arms. I cried. I'm not ashamed to admit that. So standing in that attic, looking at a photo of the wrong baby labeled "Our Girl" in my wife's handwriting, I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I felt like the floor was tilting beneath me, like the foundation of my house, of my life, had just revealed a crack I'd never noticed. The box was old cardboard, water-stained in one corner. Across the top, in thick black marker that had faded to gray, someone had written, "Do not open. 1998. I hadn't been looking for it. I'd come up here searching for my father's old drafting tools because my nephew wanted to learn technical drawing. The attic was Vanessa's domain. She organized it. She decided what got stored, what got donated, what got thrown away. For 18 years, I'd trusted that organization. Now I was pulling item after item from this box like a coroner examining evidence at a crime scene. More photos, at least 40 of them, all of the same baby, the wrong baby, some in a hospital setting, some in a home I didn't recognize. A nursery painted yellow with teddy bear wallpaper we had never owned. Medical documents, discharge papers from Presbyterian Hospital dated September 14th, 1998. A patient name I couldn't make out. The ink had smeared. A hospital bracelet. Tiny. Pink. Meant for an infant's wrist. The name on the bracelet read, "Baby Girl Thornton." Our last name is Ellison. My wife's maiden name is Ashford. Thornton was not a name I had ever heard in 18 years of marriage. At the very bottom of the box, wrapped in tissue paper like something precious, I found a sealed envelope. Yellow with age, heavy like it contained multiple pages. On the front, in different handwriting, older, more formal, were 3 words: "For when necessary." I heard the attic ladder creak. "Marcus!" Vanessa's voice, floating up from below, pleasant, unsuspecting. Dinner's almost ready. What are you doing up there? I looked at the envelope in my hands, at the photographs scattered around me, at 18 years of what I thought was my life spread across dusty plywood. Just looking for Dad's old drafting kit, I called back. My voice was steady, remarkably steady. I'll be down in 5 minutes. Okay, don't take too long. I made your favorite. Her footsteps retreated down the hallway. I stood there in the attic of my own home, holding evidence that my entire family might be built on a lie. And I did something that surprised even me. I put everything back in the box. Every photograph, every document, the bracelet, the envelope. I sealed it up. I placed it exactly where I had found it, behind the artificial Christmas tree, beneath a stack of my old architecture magazines. And then I climbed down the ladder, washed the dust off my hands, and sat down to dinner with my wife and daughter like nothing had happened. Because here's what 18 years of marriage teaches you, if you're paying attention. When you find evidence of a lie, you don't confront the liar. Not immediately, not emotionally. You gather more evidence. You build a case. You figure out what the hell you're actually dealing with before you blow up your entire life. Vanessa passed me the mashed potatoes. Riley talked about her chemistry test. The evening news murmured in the background about a storm system moving up the coast. And I sat there, smiling at appropriate moments, contributing to conversation when expected, while running a single question through my mind on an endless loop. Who is baby girl Thornton? That's when I realized I didn't actually know my wife at all. I need to back up. Tell you who I am, how I got here, what normal looked like before that box cracked everything open. My name is Marcus Ellison. I'm 47 years old. I've been a licensed architect in the state of North Carolina for 22 years, senior partner at Meridian Design Associates for the last 9. I design commercial buildings, office complexes, medical facilities, the occasional high-end residential project for clients with more money than taste. I grew up in Fayetteville, the son of an Army Corps of Engineers surveyor and a middle school English teacher. Nothing glamorous, nothing wealthy. My parents taught me 2 things that stuck: measure twice, cut once, and the truth is always simpler than the alternative. I met Vanessa Ashford in the summer of 2004. She was 24, I was 26. We were at a mutual friend's engagement party in Raleigh, the kind of outdoor tent affair with fairy lights and champagne I couldn't really afford at the time. Vanessa was stunning. Blonde hair, green eyes, a laugh that seemed to carry across the entire reception. But what drew me in wasn't her looks. It was the way she listened. Really listened. Like whatever you were saying was the most important thing she'd ever heard. I told her about my work, about my dreams of one day designing something that mattered. A library, a community center, something that would outlast me. Most women I dated got bored about 3 sentences into that conversation. Vanessa asked follow-up questions, remembered details I mentioned weeks later. We married in April 2006. Small ceremony. Her family's estate in Charlotte. A beautiful old property I later learned had been in the Ashford family for 4 generations. Her family was old money, not obscene wealth, but comfortable, established. Her father, Walter, owned commercial real estate throughout the Southeast. Her mother, Evelyn, served on hospital boards and charity committees. Her brother, Raymond, managed the family's investment portfolio. I was, by their standards, nobody. They were never cruel about it, never openly hostile. But there was a distance, a calculation in the way Evelyn looked at me that suggested she was waiting for me to fail, waiting for Vanessa to come to her senses. She's still waiting, I suppose. or was, until everything fell apart. Vanessa told me early in our relationship that she couldn't have children naturally. Endometriosis, she said, scarring from a surgery she'd had at 19. We discussed IVF, adoption, surrogacy. We agreed we'd find a way. And then, in January 1998, she told me she was pregnant. A miracle, she said. The doctors were amazed. She'd been seeing a specialist in Charleston without telling me, wanted to surprise me with good news instead of dragging me through the disappointment of another failed attempt. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my wife. She'd never lied to me about anything significant, and the joy on her face when she showed me the pregnancy test, that kind of joy is hard to fake, I thought. The pregnancy was difficult. Vanessa was sick constantly. She spent 3 weeks on bed rest in her 3rd trimester. Her mother practically moved in to help care for her. I was working brutal hours trying to make partner at the firm. I wasn't as present as I should have been. That's a regret I'll carry forever. Riley was born on September 11th, 1998. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, 20 inches long. A perfect, screaming, red-faced little human being who changed everything I understood about love. I was in the delivery room. I watched her take her first breath. That part was real. I have to believe that part was real. The next 16 years were good. Genuinely good. We moved to a bigger house when Riley was 3. Vanessa quit her marketing job to be a full-time mother. I made partner. Riley grew from a baby to a toddler, to a child, to a teenager with opinions and ambitions and my stubborn streak. There were hard times, of course. My mother's death in 2008. A miscarriage Vanessa had in 2011 that we never really talked about. A rough patch in our marriage around 2015 when I was working too much and she was drinking too much and we forgot how to be in the same room without fighting. But we survived all of it. Therapy, compromise, the daily effort of choosing each other. I thought I knew everything important about the woman I married. Turns out I was missing the most important thing of all. The first anomaly, before the box, happened 3 months earlier. June. Vanessa's mother, Evelyn, had been admitted to Presbyterian Hospital for a cardiac arrhythmia. Nothing life-threatening, but she needed a pacemaker installed and would be recovering for several days. I drove Vanessa to visit her. We'd been in the hospital for about an hour when I went to find a vending machine. I got turned around in the corridors, you know how hospitals are, all those identical hallways, and ended up in the maternity wing by accident. There was a wall of photographs there. Presbyterian babies, 25 years of miracles. A massive display of newborn photos organized by year, going back to 1995. I stopped to look, mostly out of curiosity. Found the 1998 section. Scanned for Riley. She wasn't there. I figured they didn't include every baby. Or maybe Vanessa hadn't submitted a photo. Or maybe the display only featured babies born to families who donated to the hospital. But something about it stuck with me. A splinter in my mind I couldn't quite reach. When I got back to Evelyn's room, I mentioned it to Vanessa. "That's strange," she said. "I thought I sent them a picture. They asked for one. Maybe it got lost in the mail." She changed the subject immediately. Started asking about the parking situation, whether I'd remembered to feed the cat. I let it go. Second anomaly. August. Riley came to me with a school assignment, a P biology. They were doing a unit on genetics, and the teacher wanted students to create family pedigree charts tracking inherited traits. Eye color, earlobe attachment, widow's peak, that sort of thing. Riley was confused about the eye color. "Dad, Mom has green eyes. You have brown eyes. I have blue eyes. My teacher says that's basically impossible. Like the odds are less than 1%. I laughed it off. Genetics are complicated, sweetheart. You probably got recessive genes from both sides. Didn't your grandmother have blue eyes? Which grandmother? Mine. Grandma Frances. Blue as the ocean. Riley seemed satisfied. She finished her chart, got an A on the project, moved on. But I found myself thinking about it late at night. Brown plus green doesn't usually make blue. The genetics teacher was right. It's not impossible, but it's rare. Very rare. I told myself I was being ridiculous, paranoid, that plenty of children don't look exactly like their parents. Then I found the box. And suddenly those two anomalies, the missing hospital photo, the impossible eye color, snapped into a pattern. Not proof of anything. Not yet. But the beginning of a question. The night after I found the box, I couldn't sleep. Vanessa was next to me, breathing soft and slow, completely unaware that her husband was lying rigid in the darkness running scenarios. Scenario 1. There was a simple explanation. The box contained photographs of a relative's baby, someone named Thornton on her side of the family I'd never met. The Do Not Open label was just Vanessa being dramatic, wanting to preserve old memories. Scenario 2. Vanessa had another child before we met, one she gave up for adoption or lost somehow. The box was her private grief, something she'd never felt able to share. Scenario 3. Something was wrong with Riley's birth, a hospital mix-up, a falsified document, something that made our daughter not legally, genetically, or medically who I believed her to be. I lay there until 3 a.m., watching the ceiling fan spin, and I decided something. I needed more information before I could confront anyone. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. Because here's the thing about accusations. Once you make them, you can't take them back. If I stormed into that kitchen demanding answers about baby girl Thornton, and it turned out to be nothing, a cousin's photos, a mix-up, something innocent, my marriage would never recover from the accusation. But if it was something, if my wife had been lying to me for 18 years about our daughter, then I needed to approach this like I would approach a failing building, systematically, carefully, documenting everything. I got out of bed at 5 a.m. Vanessa wouldn't wake for another 2 hours. I went to my home office, a converted spare bedroom with drafting tables and filing cabinets, and I started a new folder on my laptop. Password protected. Hidden in a subfolder labeled Archived Project Specs 2014, I titled the document, The Box, and I began writing down everything I knew. That first week, I did nothing dramatic. I watched, I listened, I paid attention to things I'd been ignoring for years. Monday evening, Vanessa mentioned her mother was feeling better. She'd be discharged soon. We should have her over for dinner next week. She's been asking about Riley's college applications. I noticed Vanessa didn't look at me when she said this. She was focused on slicing tomatoes, her knife moving in quick, precise strokes. "How's her memory been?" I asked casually. "I heard that sometimes after surgery, older patients can have some confusion." Vanessa's knife paused for half a second, then resumed. "She's sharp as ever. Why do you ask?" "No reason. Just something I read." Tuesday. I went through our filing cabinet at home. Insurance documents mostly. Medical records we'd kept. I found Riley's birth certificate, the one I'd seen 100 times. Hospital, Presbyterian. Date, September 11th, 1998. Time, 4:17 p.m. Parents, Marcus Dean Ellison and Vanessa Claire Ellison, née Ashford. Everything looked normal, but I photographed it anyway, added it to my digital folder. I also found something I hadn't looked at in years: the hospital bill from Riley's birth. We'd kept it because the insurance dispute had taken months to resolve. The bill was from Presbyterian Hospital, as expected. But there was a note attached, a handwritten post-it in faded ink. Adjusted per VA request. M. Thornton processed. VA Vanessa Ashford, M. Thornton. That name again. Wednesday, I called my secretary at work and told her I needed to leave early. Family matter, I said. Nothing serious. I drove to Presbyterian Hospital. The administrative offices were in the basement, a maze of fluorescent lights and institutional gray walls. I found the records department after 3 wrong turns. A woman named Deborah sat behind the counter, 60s maybe, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. The kind of person who's been doing the same job for 30 years and knows where every file is buried. I need to request some records, I said. For my daughter. She was born here in 1998. Deborah looked at me over her glasses. You'll need to fill out a request form, and we need written authorization from the patient if she's over 18, or from both parents if she's under. She's 16, and I'm her father. Then I'll need your wife's signature as well. Both parents for minors. That's hospital policy. I hadn't anticipated that. What if my wife isn't available to sign? She's traveling out of the country. Deborah's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted. She'd seen this before, husbands trying to access records without their wives knowing. Then you'll need to wait until she returns. I'm sorry, sir. Policy is policy. I thanked her, took a form anyway, left the building, sat in my car for 20 minutes thinking. I couldn't get Riley's official medical records without Vanessa finding out. Not through legitimate channels. But there were other approaches. Thursday night, Vanessa went to book club. She did this every other Thursday. Met with 6 other women from the neighborhood to drink wine and pretend to discuss literature. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I went back to the attic. I had 2 hours, maybe 3. I photographed everything in the box, every document, every photograph, both sides, close-ups of every piece of text, every handwritten note. When I was done, I counted 43 photographs of the unknown baby, all taken in the first few weeks of life, based on the infant's size and development. The hospital bracelet, the discharge papers, and the envelope, still sealed. For when necessary, I held it up to the light. Thick paper inside, multiple pages. I could open it, right now, know everything immediately. But something stopped me. If I opened that envelope and what was inside confirmed my worst fears, I would have to act, immediately, emotionally. I wasn't ready for that. I didn't understand enough yet. So I put the envelope back, sealed everything up, returned the box to its hiding place, and I went back downstairs to wait for my wife, armed with 43 photographs of a baby who wasn't my daughter. I spent the next 2 weeks analyzing those photographs like crime scene evidence. At work, I told my partners I was buried in the Morrison Medical Center project, which I was. That wasn't a lie. But between meetings and site visits, I was at my computer, zooming in on baby photos, cross-referencing dates, building a timeline. Here's what I discovered. The photographs were taken over approximately 18 days, from September 11th through September 29th, 1998. The settings varied. Hospital, first 5 days, then a home, yellow nursery, unknown location, then what appeared to be a different location entirely. Neutral backgrounds, no identifying features. The baby in the photos developed normally. You could see the progression, the way newborns change rapidly in those early weeks. This baby was definitely not Riley. I knew because I still had our family photo albums, the official ones. The pictures Vanessa had selected and arranged and placed under protective plastic. Riley's newborn photos showed a completely different child. The face was different. The ears were different. Even the hospital blanket was different. Riley's photos showed a blue stripe, not pink. I was looking at photographs of two separate babies, both labeled in various ways as ours or our girl, which meant one of two things. Either Vanessa had another daughter I didn't know about, or the baby we brought home from the hospital in September 1998 was not the same baby who was born on September 11th. I didn't want to believe it. The second option was insane. The kind of thing you read about in tabloids, not real life. But the evidence was right in front of me, and the envelope, for when necessary, suggested that someone, at some point, expected this to matter. It was the last Friday of August when I made the first major breakthrough. I had spent my lunch hour at the Charlotte Public Library, searching newspaper archives from September 1998, looking for anything involving Presbyterian Hospital, baby switches, scandals, deaths. I found one small article, buried on page 6 of the Charlotte Observer, dated September 16, 1998. Infant death at Presbyterian Hospital. A newborn infant died late Wednesday at Presbyterian Hospital, according to hospital sources. The baby, a girl, was born 3 days earlier to a local family. Hospital officials declined to release the family's name, citing privacy concerns. No foul play is suspected. September 16, 1998. 5 days after Riley was born. The article didn't name the family, but when I looked at the discharge papers from the box, the papers for baby girl Thornton, the discharge date was listed as September 14, 1998. 2 days before an infant girl died at the same hospital. I sat in the library, reading that article over and over, and something cold settled into my chest. What if the baby who died was ours? What if the baby in those photos, the Thornton baby, wasn't my daughter's replacement identity? What if she was my daughter? I drove home that evening with my hands shaking on the wheel. Vanessa was in the kitchen when I arrived, making something that smelled like roast chicken. Riley was at the table doing homework. The evening news was on low volume in the background. Normal. Everything normal. But when I looked at Riley, really looked at her, the way I hadn't in years, I saw something I'd been missing. She didn't look like Vanessa. I'd always assumed she took after my side. The dark hair, the stubborn chin, features that didn't match her mother's delicate bone structure. But she didn't look like me either. Not really. Riley looked like someone I had never met. I sat down at the dinner table. I made small talk. I laughed at the appropriate moments, and I decided that I needed professional help. Not a therapist, an investigator. The next morning, I found myself in the waiting room of Fletcher and Associates Investigative Services. I'd found them online the night before. 3 ex-law enforcement officers running a discreet operation out of an office building in downtown Charlotte. High ratings. A specialty in family matters requiring sensitivity. The man who met with me was named Terrence Fletcher. Mid-50s. Gray hair, sharp eyes, the kind of handshake that felt like a test. "Mr. Ellison," he said, settling into his chair. "What can we do for you?" I had rehearsed this in the car, had almost convinced myself I could describe the situation calmly, rationally. But when I opened my mouth, what came out was, I think my wife stole our daughter. Fletcher didn't blink. Didn't react at all, actually. Just pulled out a notepad and a pen. Tell me everything. So I did. The box in the attic, the photographs, baby girl Thornton, the newspaper article about the infant death, the missing hospital photo, the impossible eye color. Fletcher listened without interruption. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You understand, he said carefully, that what you're describing would be multiple felonies, identity fraud, falsifying government documents, potentially conspiracy to obstruct justice. I understand. And you want me to investigate your wife, the mother of your child, without her knowledge? Yes. Fletcher set down his pen. Mr. Ellison, I've been doing this job for 30 years. I've seen a lot of husbands come through that door convinced their wives are hiding something. 9 times out of 10, it's nothing. Paranoia, midlife anxiety, the stress of a long marriage. And the 10th time? He met my eyes. The 10th time, they're right. How do I know which one I am? You don't. Not yet. That's what the investigation is for. He leaned forward. I need to know. If we do this, and we find evidence that your wife has been lying to you for 18 years, are you prepared for what that means? For your marriage? For your daughter? For everything you've built? I thought about Riley, about her laugh, about the way she'd called me Daddy until she was 12, and then switched to Dad overnight, like a switch had flipped. About the moment I'd held her in that delivery room, believing with everything I had that she was mine. I need to know the truth, I said, whatever it costs. Fletcher nodded slowly. All right, then let's get started. That was the day everything changed. Fletcher started with the obvious, the name Thornton. If your wife used that name in connection with the hospital billing, he explained during our second meeting, there's a record somewhere. People don't just invent identities, they borrow them. From friends, family, old acquaintances. He ran the name through several databases, birth records, death records, marriage licenses, property ownership. The hit came within 72 hours. Margaret Elizabeth Thornton, born March 4th, 1952. Died August 3rd, 2017. She had been a nurse at Presbyterian Hospital from 1975 to 2003. She worked there in 1998, I said, staring at the printout Fletcher had handed me. She was working there when Riley was born. Correct, and here's where it gets interesting. Fletcher pulled out another document. Margaret Thornton retired early, 2003, 2 months after a formal complaint was filed against her by another nurse. The complaint was sealed. I can't access the details. But she left Presbyterian the same week. What kind of complaint? Could be anything. Procedural violations, patient care issues, or... He paused. Something else entirely. She's dead now. 5 years. Cancer, according to the obituary. Fletcher handed me another sheet. But she had a daughter. Denise Thornton Crawford. Lives in Greenville, South Carolina. About 2 hours from here. I looked at the name, the address, the phone number. You think she knows something? I think Margaret Thornton processed a hospital bill with your wife's initials and her own last name. I think that's not a coincidence. And I think if anyone knows why, it's her daughter. That's when I noticed something on the obituary. Under survivors, it listed Denise as Margaret's only child. But the birth records Fletcher had pulled showed something different. Margaret Thornton had given birth once, in 1982. A daughter. She'd also given birth in 1998. A son. who died 3 days after he was born. I drove to Greenville on a Saturday, telling Vanessa I was meeting a client about a potential project. I'd been lying to my wife for 3 weeks now. Small lies. Working late. Meeting ran over. Traffic was terrible. It was getting easier. That was the frightening part. Denise Thornton Crawford lived in a modest ranch house in a quiet neighborhood. The lawn was immaculate. A ceramic frog sat by the mailbox. She answered on the second knock. Mid-40s. Her mother's eyes, I recognized them from the obituary photo. Mrs. Crawford? My name is Marcus Ellison. I was hoping I could ask you some questions about your mother. She didn't invite me in. Didn't even open the screen door. What kind of questions? I believe your mother worked at Presbyterian Hospital in Charlotte in 1998, and I believe she was involved in something connected to my family. Denise's expression didn't change, but I saw her hand tighten on the doorframe. I don't know anything about my mother's work. Mrs. Crawford, I have documentation suggesting your mother processed confidential hospital records in a way that doesn't make sense. My daughter was born at that hospital. I need to understand what happened. I can't help you. Can't? Or won't? She looked at me for a long moment, then quietly. Some things are better left buried, Mr. Ellison. For everyone. She closed the door. I stood on her porch, listening to the click of the deadbolt, and I felt the first real confirmation of what I'd suspected. She knew. Denise Thornton Crawford knew exactly what her mother had done, and whatever it was bad enough that she'd rather slam the door in a stranger's face than discuss it. I didn't give up. I staked out Denise's street for 4 hours the next day, watching from my car like some kind of amateur detective. At 2:15 p.m., she left her house, got in a Honda Accord, drove to a strip mall about 2 miles away. She went into a UPS store, came out 10 minutes later carrying a package. Nothing suspicious, just an ordinary errand. But as she was getting back into her car, I saw something that made my heart stop. Another car. Silver Lexus, parked 3 spaces away from Denise. The driver was watching her. As Denise pulled out, the silver Lexus followed. Not close, careful, maintaining distance. I followed both of them. Denise drove home, pulled into her garage. The Lexus drove past without stopping, circled the block, and parked on a side street with a view of her house. I parked behind a landscaping truck where I could watch without being obvious. After about 20 minutes, the Lexus driver got out, walked toward Denise's house, stopped at the mailbox, pretended to tie a shoe while glancing at the front windows, then walked back to the car and left. I got a partial plate number, North Carolina tags, and I got a look at the driver. Female, blonde hair, sunglasses, expensive clothes. She looked familiar, disturbingly familiar. I couldn't place her, but I was certain I'd seen that face before. I gave the partial plate to Fletcher the next morning. This woman was watching Denise Thornton Crawford, I said. She was surveilling her. I'm almost positive I've seen her somewhere, but I can't remember where. Fletcher ran the plate. Found 7 possible matches in North Carolina. He pulled DMV photos for all of them. The third one hit me like a physical blow. Courtney Elizabeth Palmer, age 51, address in Charlotte. She was Vanessa's cousin. I'd met her exactly twice in 18 years. Once at our wedding, once at a family reunion about 10 years ago. Courtney Palmer was following the daughter of the nurse who'd processed mysterious hospital records in 1998. 26 years later. Why? The Ashford family is protecting something, Fletcher said during our next meeting. and they've been protecting it for a very long time. He'd been digging into the family's finances, court records, property transactions. What he found was unusual. In October 1998, 1 month after Riley was born, the Ashford Family Trust made a payment of $50,000 to an individual named Margaret E. Thornton. The stated purpose on the trust document: medical consulting services. In 2003, the same year Margaret Thornton retired from Presbyterian Hospital, another payment, $75,000. In 2010, another $40,000. The payments continued annually until 2017, the year Margaret Thornton died. Total, over $400,000, spread across 19 years. That's not medical consulting, I said. That's hush money. That's what it looks like to me, Fletcher agreed. Question is, hush money for what? I knew what I had to do next. I had to open that envelope. I waited until the following Thursday, book club night. Vanessa kissed me goodbye at 6:30. Don't wait up. Margaret is hosting and she makes the strongest martinis. The moment her car was out of sight, I was in the attic. I pulled the box out carefully, set it on the floor, photographed its position first, then its contents. The envelope was at the bottom, exactly where I'd left it. For when necessary. I held it up to the attic's bare bulb. Heavy, multiple pages. I'd been waiting weeks for this moment, building myself up to it, preparing for whatever truth was inside. But now that it was here, I hesitated. Once I opened this envelope, there was no going back. No pretending I didn't know. No preserving the comfortable fiction of my family. I thought about Riley. Her smile, her future, the way she'd looked at me last week when I helped her with her college essay, so full of trust. Whatever was in this envelope, whatever truth had been hidden for 18 years, she was innocent. She hadn't asked for any of this, but she deserved to know who she really was. I opened the envelope. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a letter, handwritten on expensive cream stationery, dated September 28, 1998. To whom it may concern, this letter serves as a record of the events of September 1998. I am writing this of my own free will, with full understanding of the consequences should this information ever become public. On September 11, 1998, Vanessa Claire Ashford gave birth to a daughter at Presbyterian Hospital in Charlotte, North Carolina. The child was born with severe complications and died within 18 hours. Death certificate attached. On September 12, 1998, at the request of Evelyn Ashford, I facilitated the transfer of an abandoned infant from Presbyterian Hospital's custody to the Ashford family. This child had been surrendered by her birth mother under circumstances that prevented normal adoption procedures. The birth mother was a patient at Presbyterian, admitted for unrelated reasons, who could not keep the child due to personal circumstances. The infant was given the identity of the deceased Ashford child. Birth certificate, hospital records, and other documents were modified accordingly. I was compensated for my assistance and my silence. I am keeping this record because I believe every person has the right to know their true origins. The child's birth mother is named in the attached document. May God forgive us all. Margaret E. Thornton, R.N. I read the letter 3 times. My hands were shaking so badly that the paper rattled. Our baby died. The baby Vanessa gave birth to, the one I saw in the delivery room, the one I believed was my daughter. She lived for 18 hours, and then she died. And then my wife's family got a replacement, an abandoned infant, surrendered by her birth mother. given a dead baby's identity. My daughter Riley, the child I had raised for 16 years, loved without question, sacrificed for without hesitation, was not my daughter. She wasn't Vanessa's daughter. She was a stranger's child, slipped into our lives like a forgery into a museum. I turned to the second document. It was a death certificate. Baby girl Ellison. Born September 11th, 1998, 4:17 p.m., died September 12th, 1998, 10:34 a.m., cause of death, congenital heart defect, complications. The certificate had been marked void in red ink, stamped over with record amended, see file number 98-7732. Someone had voided my daughter's death certificate, made it disappear, as if she had never died at all. The third document was a single page, typed, no signature, just a name and an address. Birth mother, Lisa Marie Connolly. Last known address, September 1998. 847 Oak Street, Apartment 4B, Charlotte, NC. Lisa Marie Connolly. The woman who had given birth to the child I'd raised as my own. The woman who had surrendered her daughter, either voluntarily or under pressure, to a wealthy family that needed a replacement for their dead baby. I sat in the attic for a very long time. The dust, the silence, the bare bulb casting harsh shadows over everything. 18 years. Vanessa had lied to me for 18 years. Her entire family had conspired to falsify government documents, cover up an infant death, and give me a stranger's child while telling me she was my own flesh and blood. I thought about the night Riley was born. The joy, the tears, the overwhelming love that had crashed over me like a wave. All of it built on a lie. I thought about Vanessa, her smiles, her touches, the way she'd looked at me on our wedding day, promising to love me honestly and faithfully until death. Lies. I thought about confronting her, screaming, demanding answers, but something cold and hard had settled into my chest. If I confronted her now, emotional and unprepared, she would have time to destroy evidence, to coordinate stories with her mother and brother, to get ahead of me legally. I had been a fool for 18 years. I would not be a fool now. I photographed every document, put them back in the envelope, returned the box to its exact position. Then I climbed down from the attic, washed the dust off my hands, and waited for my wife to come home. She arrived at 10:47 p.m., slightly tipsy from Margaret's martinis. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "Missed you, baby." "Missed you too," I said. And I smiled. Because I was no longer her husband. I was her adversary. She just didn't know it yet. I met with Fletcher the next morning. When I showed him the photographs of the documents, he went very quiet. "This is bigger than I thought," he said finally. "A lot bigger. I need to find Lisa Marie Connolly. Already running her. She's not at that address anymore. That building was condemned in 2005. He tapped his keyboard. But I've got a trail, Social Security activity, driver's license renewals. Give me 48 hours. I also need to understand the legal situation. If I come forward with this, if I prove what they did, what happens?" Fletcher leaned back in his chair. "Honestly, it's complicated. The crimes they committed, falsifying vital records, identity fraud, those have statutes of limitations. Depending on jurisdiction, some of them may have expired years ago. So they get away with it? Criminal prosecution might be difficult, but civil action is another matter. And custody..." He paused. "Riley is a minor. She's been raised under a false identity. There could be implications for your parental rights, for her legal status, for everything. What about her? What about Riley? She's a victim in all this, but she's also almost 18. In 2 years, she'll be a legal adult, and whatever happened to her as an infant will be academic. History. I thought about that. My daughter, not my daughter, becoming an adult and learning that everything she believed about herself was a lie. I need to talk to her biological mother, I said. Lisa Connolly, before I do anything else. Why? Because I need to understand how Riley ended up with the Ashfords in the first place. Was she abandoned, sold, coerced? If Lisa was pressured or paid off, that's another crime. And that might not have a statute of limitations. Fletcher nodded slowly. Smart. You're thinking like an investigator now. I'm thinking like a man who just found out his entire family is a lie. I need the whole truth before I can figure out what to do with it. Fletcher found Lisa Marie Connolly 6 days later. She was living in Raleigh, working as a night manager at a hotel near the airport. Divorced twice. No other children. I got her address, her work schedule, her phone number. But I didn't call ahead. I drove to Raleigh on a Sunday evening, found the hotel, waited in the parking lot until I saw her through the lobby windows. She was in her late 40s, thin, tired-looking, brown hair pulled back in a ponytail. She didn't look like Riley, but there was something about the shape of her jaw, the way she held herself that felt familiar. I waited until she stepped outside for a cigarette break. Then I approached. Lisa Connolly? She looked at me with immediate suspicion. Who's asking? My name is Marcus Ellison. I think we need to talk. I don't know you. No, but I think you know something about me, about my family. I took a breath. About a baby you gave up in September 1998. Lisa's cigarette dropped from her fingers. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, very quietly, I wondered when someone would come. We talked in her car. She wouldn't go inside. Didn't want her coworkers to see. I was 22, she said. Barely. I just found out I was pregnant when my boyfriend disappeared. Left me with nothing. No money, no support, no family who gave a damn. What about the baby's father? Tyler Connolly, my husband briefly. We got married when I found out I was pregnant. Divorced before the baby was born. He wanted nothing to do with either of us. She lit another cigarette with shaking hands. I was going to give the baby up for adoption. Planned it all out. Found an agency. Filled out the paperwork. But that's not what happened. No. She exhaled smoke. I went into labor early, complications. They rushed me to Presbyterian Hospital, and while I was there, recovering, this woman came to see me. What woman? Older, expensive clothes, gold jewelry. She said her name was Evelyn. Evelyn, Vanessa's mother. She said she'd heard about my situation, that she wanted to help, that she and her daughter had just lost their own baby, and they were looking for an infant to adopt. A private adoption. That's what she called it. Said it would be faster than going through the agency. More money for me. Easier for everyone. How much money? Lisa was quiet for a moment. $50,000. The same amount as the first payment to Margaret Thornton. I was desperate, Lisa said. I had nothing. No job, no home, no way to support a child. $50,000 was more money than I'd ever seen in my life. And the woman, Evelyn, she promised my baby would have everything. The best schools, the best opportunities, a family who would love her. So you agreed. I signed papers. I don't even remember what they said. I was on painkillers from the delivery. Everything was hazy. And then? And then she was gone. Lisa's voice cracked. They took her while I was sleeping. When I woke up, Evelyn was there with a cashier's check. She said everything was taken care of, that I should go home and start my new life, and never contact them again. Did you ever try? To contact them, I mean? Once, about 5 years later. I'd cleaned up my life a little, got sober, started thinking about what I'd done. She wiped her eyes. I called the number Evelyn had given me. Some lawyer answered, said if I ever reached out again, they'd destroy me, that I'd signed away all my rights, and I was in no position to make trouble. You were afraid. I was terrified. These were powerful people, rich people, the kind who could make someone like me disappear. She looked at me. Why are you here, Mr. Ellison? After all these years, why are you asking about this? I told her. Everything. The box, the photographs, the fake birth certificate, the conspiracy to give me another man's child while pretending she was my own. Lisa listened in silence. When I finished, she was crying openly. You raised her, she said. You raised my daughter. I thought she was mine. What's she like? Is she happy? I thought about Riley, her laugh, her dreams, the way she'd stayed up until 2 a.m. last month helping me organize old photos because I'd mentioned missing my father. She's wonderful, I said. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. Even knowing, she didn't ask for any of this. She's innocent. Lisa nodded slowly. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I need your help. I need you to sign an affidavit, confirming what happened, documenting the payment, naming Evelyn Ashford. If you do that, you give me leverage, evidence I can use to expose what they did. And my daughter? What happens to her? That depends on a lot of things, but she deserves to know the truth about who she is, about where she came from. Lisa was quiet for a long time. I've spent 16 years pretending I never had a daughter, she said finally. 16 years trying to forget the worst mistake of my life. Every birthday, I wonder what she looks like, whether she's happy, whether she ever thinks about me. She doesn't know you exist. They never told her. I know. Lisa took a shaky breath. I'll sign your affidavit. I'll tell the truth. Whatever happens, I can't keep lying anymore. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. She looked at me with something hard in her eyes. I'm doing it for her, for the daughter they stole from me. I drove back to Charlotte with Lisa Connolly's signed statement in my briefcase. It was nearly midnight when I pulled into my driveway. The house was dark except for the porch light. I sat in the car for a few minutes, just breathing. Inside that house was my wife, the woman I had loved for 18 years, the mother of no, not the mother, the woman who had pretended to be the mother, the liar, the co-conspirator in a scheme to steal someone's child, and Riley, asleep upstairs, dreaming about colleges and proms and a future she didn't know was built on fabrication. What was I going to do? I had evidence now, documents, testimony, proof of what the Ashford family had done. But proof of what, exactly? The baby Vanessa gave birth to died. That was tragic, but it wasn't criminal. The family arranged a private adoption that bypassed normal channels. Illegal, probably. But the statute of limitations. They falsified birth records, created a fake identity for Riley, paid off a nurse to help them cover it up, bribed Lisa Connolly to disappear. Was any of that still prosecutable? Would the authorities even care about a 26-year-old paperwork crime? And even if they did, even if I could bring charges, what would that accomplish? Riley's identity would be exposed. Her birth certificate declared void. Her entire sense of self would be destroyed. For what? So I could punish my wife? So I could get revenge on her family? I thought about something my father told me once, years ago, when I was angry about a job I'd lost. Before you burn down a bridge, he said, make sure you know which side you want to be standing on. I knew which side I wanted to be on. Riley's side. Whatever happened next, whatever decisions I made, they had to be about protecting her. Not about punishing Vanessa, not about exposing the Ashfords, about giving Riley the truth she deserved in a way that wouldn't destroy her. I went inside, climbed the stairs, checked on Riley. She was asleep, earbuds in, phone glowing beside her pillow. Then I went to my bedroom. Vanessa was awake, reading. Where were you? She asked. Driving, thinking, lot on my mind with the Morrison project. She smiled. Don't work too hard, baby. I smiled back. Never. I lay down beside her, closed my eyes, and I started planning. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in controlled deception. I went to work, came home, had dinner with my family, helped Riley with her applications. Meanwhile, I was building a case. Fletcher helped me dig into the Ashford family's finances. We found a pattern of payments to various individuals over the years. Margaret Thornton, yes, but also others. A lawyer in Charleston who'd handled the falsified paperwork. A doctor at Presbyterian who'd signed off on amended records. A county clerk who'd filed the fraudulent birth certificate. Everyone had been paid. Everyone had been silenced. But payments create trails, and trails can be followed. We also found something unexpected. The Ashfords had done this before. 28 years ago, Evelyn Ashford's sister, a woman named Patricia Ashford Wright, had lost a baby under similar circumstances. Stillbirth, complications. 3 weeks later, she was photographed at a family event with a healthy infant. No adoption records exist for that child. Patricia's son, Evelyn's nephew, was now 34 years old, married, living in Asheville, working as an attorney, completely unaware, presumably, that he'd been acquired the same way Riley was. This wasn't a one-time desperation move. This was a system, a methodology, a way for wealthy families to solve the embarrassing problem of infant death by simply purchasing replacements. They have a playbook, Fletcher said. Find a desperate mother, pay her off, bribe the hospital staff, falsify the records, and make the problem disappear. How many times? At least twice in this family. But they're connected to other old money families in the region. If this is their playbook, others might be using it too. I thought about that. The implications, the web of lies and bribery and stolen identities that might stretch across generations. But I couldn't fix all of it. I could only fix my part. I could only protect my daughter. I started to tell Vanessa I knew. 12 times over those 3 weeks I almost said it. At dinner, when she laughed at something Riley said, and I saw the practiced ease of her deception. In bed, when she reached for me, and I felt my skin crawl at her touch. In the car, driving to her mother's house, listening to her chat about Christmas plans while I sat beside her, contemplating how to dismantle everything she'd built. But I held back. Because I wasn't ready. Because the trap wasn't set. And because there was one more piece of evidence I needed. The actual birth certificate of baby girl Ellison. The real one. The death certificate that had been voided and hidden. If that document still existed somewhere, if I could prove that a baby named Ellison died at Presbyterian Hospital in September 1998. Then I would have irrefutable proof that Riley was not who she claimed to be. Not Vanessa's word against mine. Not Lisa Connolly's affidavit. Not suspicious payments or sealed complaints. An official government document showing that the real Riley Ellison died 2 days after she was born. Fletcher had tried the normal channels. Vital records wouldn't release anything related to a minor without parental consent. And the hospital's archives were sealed. But there was another way, Evelyn Ashford. If anyone had kept the original death certificate, as insurance, as leverage, as proof of what she'd accomplished, it would be her. And Evelyn was currently recovering from heart surgery at her Charlotte estate, alone most days, vulnerable. I went to visit my mother-in-law on a Tuesday afternoon. Vanessa was at a charity luncheon. Riley was at school. The nurse who looked after Evelyn had Tuesdays off. I rang the bell, waited, rang again. Evelyn answered the door herself. Frail, pale, decades older than she'd looked even a year ago. Different ears, no visible birthmark. And yet, written on the back of this photograph in my wife's handwriting I'd been reading for 18 years, were 2 words that made my chest tighten. Our girl. I didn't move for probably 3 minutes. Just stood there in the dust and the heat of the attic, holding this photograph like it might detonate. Before I continue, I need you to understand something important. I am not a paranoid man. I'm an architect. I design buildings. I work with blueprints and specifications and structural integrity reports. My entire career is built on precision, accuracy, and making sure things are exactly what they appear to be. When I married Vanessa in 2006, I did so believing I understood exactly who she was. Graceful, intelligent, devoted to family, the kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthday and organized charity fundraisers and made sure our daughter Riley never missed a piano lesson. When our daughter was born in September 19, and the truth, all of it, and the death certificate, the real one, for the baby who actually died, the one Vanessa gave birth to. There is no, don't. I stepped closer. Don't lie to me anymore. I've spent 3 weeks building a case. I have documents, witnesses, financial records. I know about the payments to Margaret Thornton. I know about the lawyer in Charleston. I know about your sister Patricia and her miracle baby 30 years ago. For the first time in 18 years, I saw Evelyn Ashford look afraid. If you go public with this, I'm not going to go public. Not yet. Not unless you force me to. Then what do you want? I told you. The death certificate. And the truth. Evelyn stared at me for a long moment. Then she stepped aside. You'd better come in. We sat in her study, leather chairs, books she'd never read lining the walls, a portrait of her late husband watching from above the fireplace. You have to understand, she began. Vanessa was devastated. She'd tried for years to get pregnant. The doctors told her it was impossible. And then, miraculously, it happened. She was so happy, we all were. And then the baby died. Evelyn closed her eyes. 18 hours. That's all we had with her. 18 hours of hope and then nothing. What happened? Heart defect. Congenital. The doctors said there was nothing they could do. She just faded. Vanessa held her the whole time. Evelyn's voice cracked. I had never seen my daughter in that much pain. Not before. Not since. So you decided to replace her? No. Not immediately. That came later. 3 days later, when Vanessa was still in the hospital, refusing to eat, refusing to speak. I heard about the Connolly girl. One of the nurses, Margaret, told me about her. A young woman who'd given birth to a healthy baby. No money, no support. Planning to give the child up anyway. And you saw an opportunity. I saw a solution. A way to give my daughter her life back. A way to save everyone from unbearable pain. Everyone except Lisa Connolly. She was going to give up the baby regardless. What difference did it make whether the child went to an adoption agency or to a family who could give her everything? The difference is that you committed crimes, fraud, bribery, falsifying government documents. To protect my family, to give my granddaughter, because that's what she is, Marcus, whatever you think, to give her a life she never would have had otherwise. She's not your granddaughter. She's Lisa Connolly's daughter. Blood isn't family. Love is family. Sacrifice is family. I have loved that girl for 16 years. Vanessa has loved her. You have loved her. That's what matters. What matters is the truth. Evelyn met my eyes. The truth will destroy her. Lies have already destroyed me. We sat in silence for a moment. The death certificate, I said finally. Where is it? Evelyn didn't answer. Evelyn, the death certificate, now. She stood slowly, crossed to the bookshelf, pulled out a thick volume of legal texts that probably hadn't been opened in 30 years. Behind it was a small wall safe. She entered the combination, reached inside, pulled out a manila folder. I kept this, she said, because I knew someday someone might find out. I thought, if it ever came to that, I would need leverage, proof that I could expose myself if necessary. Mutually assured destruction. You were protecting yourself. I was protecting all of us. She handed me the folder. Inside was a single document, a death certificate for baby girl Ellison, born September 11, 1998. Died September 12, 1998. It was not voided. It was the original. And attached to it, on Presbyterian Hospital letterhead, was a note in Margaret Thornton's handwriting. Original preserved per E. Ashford's request. Amended certificate filed with county. God help us all. I held the death certificate of my daughter, my real daughter, in my hands. The daughter I never knew. The daughter who lived for 18 hours and then vanished, replaced by a stranger's child, while I stood in the waiting room eating vending machine sandwiches and dreaming about the future. Get out, I said to Evelyn. This is my house. I don't care. Get out of this room. I need a minute. She left without argument, closed the door behind her, and I sat alone in that study, holding the only proof that my daughter ever existed, and I wept. I didn't go home that night. I checked into a hotel downtown, sat in the dark, drank whiskey I didn't taste. Everything I'd discovered was true. Everything I'd feared was confirmed. My wife had lied to me for 18 years. Her family had purchased a replacement child, like you'd purchase a piece of furniture. Riley, the girl I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for, was not my daughter. And yet, 16 years of bedtime stories, helping with homework, teaching her to ride a bike, to drive, to face the world with courage. 16 years of I love you, Dad, of hugs that felt like coming home, of inside jokes and shared silences and the 1,000 small moments that make up a life. Was none of that real? Was fatherhood just biology? Or was it something more? I didn't sleep. I just sat there, running the same questions over and over until the sun came up and I had to make a decision. What kind of man did I want to be? And what did I owe the girl who called me Dad? I made 3 phone calls that morning. The first was to Fletcher. I need you to stop the investigation. No more digging, no more inquiries. We're done. He was silent for a moment. You're sure? I'm sure. Send me your final invoice. The second was to a lawyer. Not Fletcher's contact, someone I found myself. A family attorney named Barbara Chen, highly recommended, specializing in complex custody situations. I need advice, I told her. It's complicated. Can we meet today? I can fit you in at 2. The third call was to Lisa Connolly. I found the death certificate, I said. I have all the proof I need. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. But I wanted you to know, whatever happens, Riley will learn the truth. About you, about where she came from. I won't let them bury this forever. When? When she's ready. When I've figured out the right way to tell her. Can I meet her? Someday? I don't know. That'll be her choice. But if she wants to, I won't stop her. Lisa was quiet. Then, thank you for not just walking away from this. I couldn't. She deserves better. My meeting with Barbara Chen was illuminating. I showed her everything. The documents, the affidavit, the death certificate. She listened without interruption, read each page carefully. When she finished, she set the folder down and looked at me. Mr. Ellison, this is one of the most extraordinary cases I've ever encountered. What are my options? Legally, you have several. You could pursue criminal charges against your wife and her family. Though, as you've noted, statutes of limitations complicate that. You could file civil suits for fraud, emotional distress, damages. You could seek to have Riley's birth certificate corrected, which would involve court proceedings and likely make everything public. And Riley? She's a minor. Her legal status would become uncertain. The identity she's been using isn't legally hers. She might face complications with her social security number, her school records, eventually her college applications. Everything would need to be untangled. What if I don't want to do any of that? Barbara raised an eyebrow. I'm not sure I understand. What if I don't want to destroy Riley's life? What if I just want the truth? For her to know who she really is without blowing up everything around her? That's complicated. As long as she's a minor, you and your wife have joint custody. If you tell Riley the truth against your wife's wishes, there could be legal consequences. Vanessa could argue you're attempting parental alienation, trying to turn Riley against her. Even though everything I'd be telling her is true? Truth isn't always a defense in family court. The court's priority is the child's well-being. If a judge determines that exposing this information would harm Riley emotionally, they might restrict your ability to discuss it with her. So I'm trapped. Not exactly, but you're in a difficult position. Barbara leaned forward. Mr. Ellison, can I give you some advice that isn't strictly legal? Please. Whatever you decide to do, whether you pursue this legally or not, you need to have a conversation with your wife first. Not a confrontation, a conversation. Find out what she knew, what she participated in, what she's willing to acknowledge. Because the way forward depends enormously on whether she's willing to face the truth alongside you, or whether she's going to fight you every step of the way. And if she fights me, then you have a war on your hands. And wars have casualties. The biggest casualty would be Riley. I thought about that. How do I start a conversation like that? Honey, I know you stole our daughter? Barbara didn't smile. You start by listening, by giving her a chance to explain, by finding out whether the woman you married is still in there somewhere, underneath 18 years of lies. And if she's not, then you make the hard decisions. but at least you'll know what you're dealing with. I went home that night. Vanessa was in the kitchen, as usual. Riley was upstairs, as usual. Normal. Everything normal. "I need to talk to you," I said. Something in my voice must have alarmed her. She set down the knife she'd been using. "What's wrong?" "Sit down." "Marcus, you're scaring me." "Sit. Down." She sat. I placed the folder on the table between us. The death certificate, Margaret Thornton's letter, Lisa Connolly's affidavit. "I know," I said. "I know everything." Vanessa looked at the documents. Her face went pale, then gray, then something I'd never seen before. A kind of desperate calculation, like a trapped animal deciding whether to fight or flee. "Marcus, don't. Don't lie to me. Not anymore. I know our baby died. I know your mother bought a replacement from a desperate woman at the hospital. I know you've all been paying people off for 18 years to keep this secret." "How?" "The box in the attic. The one marked 'Do Not Open.' I found it weeks ago. I've been investigating ever since." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. "You had no right." "No right?" I stood up so fast the chair fell over. "No right? You stole someone's child. You committed fraud. You lied to me every single day for 18 years, and I had no right to find out?" "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me what it was like. Tell me how you justified giving me a stranger's baby and calling her my daughter." "She is your daughter." Vanessa was crying now, mascara running. Maybe not biologically, but in every way that matters. That's not your decision to make. That's not your lie to tell. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has a choice. Vanessa shook her head violently. You don't understand. You weren't there. You didn't hold her while she died. You didn't feel her heartbeat get weaker and weaker until it stopped. You were in the waiting room eating sandwiches while I watched our baby die in my arms. The words hit me like physical blows. And afterward, she continued, I couldn't function. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to die too. I would have died, Marcus. I would have killed myself if something hadn't changed. So your mother changed it. She saved my life. She found me a daughter. She gave me a reason to keep living. By buying a human being. By saving 2 lives, mine and Riley's. That girl, Lisa's baby, she was going to end up in foster care, bounced from home to home, no stability, no future. Instead, she got us, a family, love, everything she ever needed. She got a lie. Her whole identity is a lie. Her identity is who she believes she is, who she's become. Isn't that what matters? I stared at my wife. This woman I had loved. This woman I had built a life with. What about me? I asked quietly. What about my daughter, the one who actually died? Vanessa's face crumpled. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have told you. I know that now. But at the time, I was broken. And my mother said it was the only way. That you would leave me if you knew the truth. That I would lose everything. So you chose to lie instead. I chose to survive. I chose to give us a family. I chose to make something good out of something terrible. And you never considered telling me? In 18 years, you never once thought I deserved to know? Every day. She looked up at me, tears streaming. Every single day. But the longer it went on, the more impossible it became. How do you tell someone after a year, after 5 years, after Riley started calling you daddy? The lie became the truth. It became our life. That's not how truth works. I know it isn't, but I didn't know what else to do. We stood there in the kitchen, separated by a table covered in evidence, and I realized something. I didn't hate her. I should have. By all rights, I should have wanted to destroy her the way she'd destroyed my understanding of my own life. But I just felt tired and sad and lost. "What do we do now?" Vanessa asked. "I don't know." "Are you going to leave me?" "I don't know." "Are you going to tell Riley?" "She deserves to know. She'll hate me. She'll hate all of us." "Maybe. Probably. But she deserves to know who she is." Vanessa nodded slowly. "When?" "I don't know. Not yet. Not until I figure out the right way." Can we figure it out together?" I looked at her, the woman I had loved, the woman who had lied to me every day of our marriage. "I don't know if I can trust you," I said. "I don't know if I'll ever trust you again." "I know. But I'm willing to try, for Riley's sake." "Thank you." "Don't thank me. This isn't forgiveness. This is just survival." She nodded, wiped her eyes, and we began the long, painful process of deciding how to tell our daughter that everything she believed about herself was wrong. But here's the thing about survival. Sometimes the people you're trying to survive with have other plans. 2 days after my confrontation with Vanessa, I came home to find Evelyn Ashford sitting in my living room. She was dressed impeccably, as always. Pearls, cream blazer, the picture of old money composure. Vanessa was beside her, pale and frightened. "Marcus," Evelyn said pleasantly, "we need to talk." "I thought we already did." "That was a preliminary discussion. This is a negotiation." I stayed standing. "I'm not interested in negotiations." "That's unfortunate, because I'm prepared to make you a very generous offer." "What kind of offer?" Evelyn folded her hands in her lap. "The Ashford family maintains significant assets. Real estate, investments, trusts. I'm prepared to transfer a substantial portion of those assets to you, personally, in exchange for your silence." "How substantial?" $3 million. Tax-free. Deposited into an offshore account of your choosing. I stared at her. "You're trying to bribe me." "I'm trying to solve a problem. You're unhappy. Understandably so. But going public with this information would destroy multiple lives, including Riley's. Surely a financial settlement is preferable to mutual destruction. And if I refuse?" Evelyn's expression didn't change. "Then I'll be forced to take other measures." "Such as?" "You've been conducting an investigation without your wife's knowledge or consent. Meeting with private investigators, interviewing witnesses. That could be characterized as stalking, harassment, invasion of privacy. I was investigating crimes committed against me. Crimes you can't prove to the satisfaction of a court. Crimes with expired statutes of limitations. Crimes that, if exposed, would hurt your daughter more than anyone else. You're threatening me. I'm explaining your options. Accept the money. Stay silent. Continue your life as if nothing happened. Or refuse, and face a legal battle that will destroy your career, your reputation, and your relationship with Riley." "What about Riley? What about her right to know the truth?" Evelyn's mask slipped, just slightly. "Riley doesn't need to know. The truth would only hurt her. The truth is all she has. Everything else is built on your lies. The truth is what we make it. And I've made a good truth for that girl. A loving family, financial security, every opportunity she could want. You made a prison. A beautiful prison, but a prison nonetheless." Evelyn stood. "You have 72 hours to decide. After that, my offer expires, and I'll assume we're at war." She walked past me toward the door. "One more thing," she said, turning back. Tori, if you think about going to the authorities, the police, the FBI, anyone, remember that I have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers who will tie you up in litigation for years, connections in every relevant agency, and evidence that could make your life very uncomfortable. What evidence? That's for me to know and you to worry about. She left. I looked at Vanessa. Did you know about this? She shook her head. She called this morning, said she wanted to meet. I didn't know she was going to. You brought her into my house, into our home. She's my mother. What was I supposed to do? Say no. Stand with me. For once in your life, stand with me instead of with her. Vanessa didn't answer, and in that silence, I understood something important. Whatever version of this I'd hoped for, Vanessa and I working together to navigate this crisis, it wasn't going to happen. She was still her mother's daughter. She was still choosing the lie. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my home office, surrounded by documents, thinking about Evelyn's ultimatum. $3 million to stay silent. 72 hours to decide. Legal warfare if I refused. It would be so easy to take the money. Walk away, continue the comfortable fiction that had been my life for 18 years. But I kept thinking about Riley, about the moment she would find out, if she ever found out, that her entire identity was a fabrication. That the man she called Dad wasn't her biological father. That the woman she called Mom wasn't her biological mother. That she'd been purchased like merchandise from a desperate woman in a hospital room 26 years ago. How would she feel if she learned that I'd known the truth and taken a bribe to keep it from her? How would she ever trust anyone again? I couldn't do that to her. I couldn't be another adult who chose convenience over her well-being. So I started planning. Not a legal battle, not a confrontation. Something more subtle. Something that would expose the truth without destroying Riley. Something that would give her the knowledge she deserved, in a way she could handle. Something that would make sure Evelyn Ashford couldn't buy or threaten her way out of accountability. I started building a trap. The first step was documentation. Over the next 3 days, Evelyn's deadline, I copied everything. Made multiple backups, stored them in different locations, a safety deposit box at a bank Vanessa didn't know about, a cloud storage account with a separate email address, a physical copy with Fletcher. If anything happened to me, if the Ashfords tried to silence me permanently, the truth would come out anyway. The second step was witnesses. I reached out to Lisa Connolly again, explained the situation, asked if she would be willing to appear in person, if necessary, to confirm her story. She agreed. I also contacted the daughter of Margaret Thornton, Denise Thornton Crawford. She'd refused to talk before, but circumstances had changed. Your mother left a confession, I told her over the phone, a letter explaining everything she did. I have it. The Ashford family is trying to suppress it. Silence on the other end. I'm not asking you to betray your mother's memory, I continued. I'm asking you to help make sure the people she helped aren't destroyed by this. What do you mean? The girl, Riley, she's 16. She doesn't know any of this. Her whole identity is built on the lie your mother helped create. I want to give her the truth in a way that won't destroy her. But I need to make sure the Ashfords can't bury it. How? I need you to confirm your mother's involvement, on the record, so that if anything happens to me, there's someone else who can verify the story. Denise was quiet for a long moment. My mother died with so many regrets, she said finally. She told me near the end that she'd done things she was ashamed of. things she couldn't fix. I think she would want me to help. Thank you. Just promise me you'll protect the girl. She's innocent in all this. I will. The third step was the hardest. I had to talk to Riley, not about everything, not yet, but about enough. I found her in her room on the evening of the third day, the last day before Evelyn's deadline. Hey, sweetheart, can we talk? She looked up from her laptop. Sure, Dad. What's up? I sat on the edge of her bed, tried to find the words. I've been thinking a lot lately, about family, about what it means to really know someone. Okay, that's kind of random. I know. Bear with me. I took a breath. If you found out something about your family, something big, something that changed how you understood who you are, would you want to know? Even if it was hard? Riley frowned. Is everything okay? Are you sick or something? No, nothing like that. I'm fine. I'm just asking hypothetically. Well, yeah, I'd want to know. I mean, it's my life, right? I should get to know the truth about my own life. Even if the truth was painful. Painful truths are still truths. You always taught me that. I smiled despite everything. I did, didn't I? You said, the foundation has to be solid, or everything built on top of it will fail. Remember? When you were teaching me about architecture? I remember. So yeah, if there's something I should know, I'd want to know it, even if it sucks. I reached out and put my hand on her shoulder. I love you, I said, no matter what. No matter what you learn or what happens. I love you, and that will never change. Dad, you're kind of freaking me out. Sorry, I just needed to say that. She hugged me, tight, the way she used to when she was little. I love you too, Dad. Whatever's going on, we'll figure it out together. Together, I agreed. But I knew that when she learned the truth, the whole truth, together, might feel very different. That night, I called Evelyn. I'm not taking your money, I said. You're making a serious mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Then you leave me no choice. Do what you have to do. I'll do the same. I hung up, and I waited for the war to begin. The first strike came 3 days later. I arrived at work to find 2 police officers waiting in the lobby. Mr. Ellison? Marcus Ellison? Yes? You're under arrest for stalking and harassment. You have the right to remain silent. They handcuffed me in front of my co-workers, led me to a patrol car, drove me to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. I was booked, photographed, fingerprinted, and then left in an interrogation room for 4 hours. When the detective finally came in, he was carrying a thick folder. Mr. Ellison, I'm Detective Harmon. I've been reviewing the complaint against you. What complaint? Filed by one Denise Thornton Crawford. She claims you've been following her, photographing her home, making threatening phone calls. That's a lie. I spoke with her once, and she agreed to help me. That's not what she's saying now. I stared at him. She's been gotten to. The Ashford family got to her. Is that your defense? A conspiracy theory? It's the truth. Harmon shrugged. We'll let the court sort that out. In the meantime, you're being charged with stalking and harassment. Bail hearing tomorrow morning. They put me in a holding cell. I sat there all night, thinking about what had happened. Denise had flipped. The Ashfords had reached her. Money, threats, something. And now she was part of their cover-up instead of part of my evidence. One by one, they were dismantling my case. But they'd made a mistake. They'd assumed that arrest and humiliation would break me, would make me accept their terms. They didn't understand who they were dealing with. I was released on bail the next morning. $20,000 posted by Fletcher, who I'd called as soon as I was allowed a phone. "They're playing hardball," Fletcher said as we left the courthouse. "The stalking charge is thin, mostly her word against yours, but it's enough to cause problems. They got to Denise somehow. Looks like it. I'll dig into what changed." He looked at me. "What's your move?" "I need to accelerate the timeline. They're trying to bury this before I can expose it. I can't let them." "How?" "I need to get Riley somewhere safe, where Vanessa and Evelyn can't interfere. And then I need to tell her the truth. That could be seen as parental kidnapping. I'm her father. I have equal custody rights. For now. But if Vanessa files an emergency motion claiming you're unstable, which she probably will, a judge could restrict your access. Then I need to move fast." The next few days were a blur. I took a leave of absence from work. Explaining the arrest would have been impossible, and the firm needed to distance itself anyway. I found a rental cabin in the mountains, 2 hours from Charlotte. Paid cash. Used a different name. I reached out to Lisa Connolly and told her to lie low. "The Ashfords know you're involved. They might try to pressure you." "I'm not backing down," she said. "I've spent 16 years being afraid. I'm done being afraid." And I waited for the right moment. It came on a Thursday. Riley had a school field trip to the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. She'd be gone all day, returning around 5 p.m. Vanessa was scheduled to meet with her lawyer at 10 a.m. I knew this because I'd been monitoring her calendar, and Evelyn was attending a charity luncheon that would keep her occupied until at least 2 p.m. I had a window. I drove to the high school, found Riley's bus just as they were loading for the trip. "Hey, sweetheart." "Dad? What are you doing here?" "Change of plans. I need you to come with me." "But the field trip, it's important. Family emergency. I already cleared it with your teacher." I hadn't, but I would deal with the consequences later. Riley hesitated. "What kind of emergency?" "I'll explain in the car. Please, Riley, trust me." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Okay, Dad." We got in my car and drove away. We drove for 2 hours. Riley asked questions the whole way. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe, where we can talk." "Talk about what?" "Everything." She fell silent after that, sensing maybe that something big was coming. When we arrived at the cabin, I made coffee, built a fire. And then I sat down across from my daughter. Not my biological daughter, but my daughter in every way that mattered. And I began to tell her the truth. I started from the beginning. The box in the attic. The photographs. Baby girl Thornton. The death certificate of the baby who was supposed to be her. Riley listened without interrupting. Her face cycled through expressions. Confusion, disbelief, horror, grief, but she didn't speak. When I got to the part about Lisa Connolly, about how she'd been pressured to give up her baby, Riley finally broke. "So my real mother, she didn't want to give me up?" "No. She was in a terrible situation, and your grandmother, Evelyn, took advantage of that. Lisa has regretted it every day since." Does she want to meet me?" "Yes, if you want to." Riley stood up, walked to the window, stared out at the mountains for a long time. "Everything I thought I knew is wrong," she said finally. "My name isn't even real. Your name is what you decide it is. The people who love you, that's real too. How can you say that? You're not even my real father." The words hit harder than anything else in this whole terrible journey. "You're right," I said quietly. I'm not your biological father, but I've been your dad for 16 years. I taught you to ride a bike. I stayed up with you when you had nightmares. I helped you with your first science fair project and drove you to 100 soccer games and held you when your first boyfriend broke your heart. I stood up and crossed to her. Biology doesn't make a parent, Riley. Love makes a parent. And I love you. Not despite the truth, but including it. You're my daughter. That's never going to change. She turned to look at me, tears streaming down her face. What about Mom? I hesitated. Your mother loves you too, in her own way. But she lied to you, to both of us, for your entire life. And she's still lying, still trying to cover it up. I don't know if that's something you can forgive. Can you? I don't know. Maybe someday. What happens now? Now, you have choices. You can meet Lisa if you want. You can decide how you want to handle the truth, who you want to tell, how public you want to be. And you can decide what kind of relationship you want with your mother and grandmother going forward. What about legally? Am I even a real person? You're real. You exist. The paperwork is complicated, but you're real. And I have a lawyer who's going to help sort everything out. Whatever you decide. Riley sank into a chair. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I know. I felt the same way when I found out. But I promise we're going to get through this, together. She looked at me with eyes that had suddenly aged 10 years. Together, she said. It wasn't a question. It was a decision. We stayed at the cabin for 2 days. Riley cried a lot, asked questions I couldn't always answer, slept badly and woke up looking hollow. But she also started to process. She asked about Lisa Connolly, what she was like, what her circumstances had been, why she'd signed away her daughter. She asked about the baby who died, the real Riley Ellison, and whether there was a grave somewhere she could visit. She asked about the legalities, the potential consequences, what would happen to her grandmother and mother if the truth came out. And she asked about me. Are you going to divorce Mom? I don't know. Probably. I don't see how I can stay married to someone who lied to me this comprehensively for this long. Are you going to take me away from her? That's not up to me. That's up to you. And probably a court, eventually. But I'm not going to let anyone keep you from the truth, or from the people who are actually part of your story. On the morning of the 3rd day, Riley made a decision. I want to meet her. Lisa, I mean. My biological mother. Are you sure? No, but I need to. I need to understand where I came from. Okay, I'll make it happen. Meanwhile, the outside world was falling apart. Vanessa had reported me for kidnapping. The police were looking for us. My face was on the news. Local architect wanted for questioning in family dispute. Evelyn had filed an emergency motion for sole custody, claiming I was mentally unstable and a danger to Riley. My lawyer, Barbara Chen, was doing her best to counter-maneuver. She'd filed a response detailing the fraud that had been committed against me and Riley. She'd submitted the evidence I'd gathered, the death certificate, Margaret Thornton's confession, Lisa Connolly's affidavit. The case was a mess, too complicated for the courts to handle quickly. Hearings were scheduled, but they were weeks away. I couldn't wait weeks. I couldn't leave Riley in limbo, hunted by people who wanted to bury the truth. I needed to end this publicly. I needed to make the evidence impossible to ignore. I called a press conference. That might sound dramatic. It was. But I'm an architect. I've done presentations to investors, city councils, skeptical clients. I know how to command a room. I know how to present information in a way that lands. I found a conference room at a Holiday Inn on the outskirts of Charlotte, invited 3 local news stations and 2 newspaper reporters, told them I had evidence of a multi-generational conspiracy involving one of Charlotte's most prominent families. They came. I stood at the front of the room with Riley beside me. Lisa Connolly sat in the front row. Fletcher was in the back, making sure no one from the Ashford family tried to intervene. "My name is Marcus Ellison," I began. "Until 3 weeks ago, I was an ordinary man, husband, father, architect. I believed I understood my life." I clicked to the first slide on my laptop, the original death certificate. "This is a death certificate for baby girl Ellison, my daughter. Born September 11th, 1998. Died September 12th, 1998. 18 hours of life, and then nothing." I let that sink in. I didn't know about this document until recently. I was never told my daughter died. Instead, I was told I had a healthy baby girl. I was allowed to hold her, to take her home, to raise her for 16 years, believing she was mine. I clicked to the next slide, the falsified birth certificate. "This is the birth certificate I've been showing people for 16 years. Same date, same hospital, same parents, but a different baby." I clicked again. Lisa Connolly's photo. "This is Lisa Marie Connolly. In September 1998, she gave birth at Presbyterian Hospital in Charlotte. She was young, desperate, and alone, and she was approached by a wealthy family who offered her $50,000 to give up her child." Lisa stood up, faced the cameras. "My name is Lisa Connolly," she said, "and I am the biological mother of the girl who has been raised as Riley Ellison." The reporters were writing frantically. Cameras were recording. "I was told my daughter would have a better life," Lisa continued, "that she would be loved and cared for by a family who could give her everything I couldn't. What I wasn't told was that she was being used to replace another baby, one who had died. I wasn't told that my daughter would be erased, given a dead child's name, a dead child's identity, and that I would be paid to disappear." She sat back down. I clicked to Margaret Thornton's confession letter. "This is a letter written by Margaret Thornton, a nurse at Presbyterian Hospital. She facilitated the fraud. She falsified the records, and she kept this confession as a record of what happened." I read key portions aloud. The cameras kept rolling. Finally, I turned to Riley. "This is my daughter," I said. "Not biologically, but in every way that matters. Her name is Riley. She's 16 years old, and until 3 days ago, she had no idea that everything she believed about herself was a lie." Riley stepped forward. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was clear. "I didn't ask for any of this," she said. "I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask to be given up. I didn't ask to be used to replace a dead baby." She looked directly into the cameras. "But I have a right to know who I am. Every person has that right. And the people who took that from me, who lied to me and my father for 16 years, they should be held accountable." She paused. "I don't know yet what my name should be. I don't know if Lisa Connolly is my mother, or just the woman who gave birth to me. I don't know if Vanessa Ashford is my mother, or just the woman who bought me." Her voice cracked, but she kept going. "But I know one thing for sure. The man standing next to me, Marcus Ellison, is my dad. He told me the truth when everyone else wanted to keep lying. He chose me over his marriage, his reputation, everything." She reached out and took my hand. "Whatever my name is, whatever my story is, He's my father, and nothing anyone does can change that. The room was silent. Then the questions started. The aftermath was exactly as chaotic as you'd expect. The story went viral. Charlotte Family Secrets, the baby switch scandal, was the headline on every local news site within hours. National outlets picked it up within a day. Vanessa released a statement through her lawyer denying everything. Evelyn refused to comment, but the evidence was too strong. The county clerk's office launched an investigation into the falsified birth certificate. The North Carolina Medical Board opened an inquiry into Presbyterian Hospital's record-keeping practices from the late 1990s, and the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department announced they were looking into potential criminal charges, not against me, but against the Ashford family. Stalking charges against me were dropped within a week. Denise Thornton Crawford recanted her statement, admitting she'd been pressured by representatives of the Ashford family. The custody case became moot when Riley, at 16 and a half, petitioned the court to be declared an emancipated minor. Given the circumstances and the overwhelming evidence of fraud, the judge granted her request. She was legally her own person now, free to make her own choices about who she was and who she wanted to be. The consequences for Vanessa and her family were severe. The county prosecutor declined to file charges for the original crimes, too old, too complicated, but did file charges for witness tampering, Denise Thornton Crawford, and obstruction of justice, the attempts to cover up the evidence after I found it. Evelyn Ashford pleaded no contest to a reduced charge of obstruction. She was sentenced to 2 years probation and community service. For a woman of her age and position, the public humiliation was a greater punishment than any prison term. Vanessa was charged with conspiracy to obstruct justice. Her case went to trial. She was found guilty, sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. I watched the verdict come down from the back of the courtroom. Riley was beside me. She'd insisted on being there. When the judge announced the sentence, Vanessa turned to look at us. Her eyes met Riley's. Something passed between them. Grief, betrayal, love, regret that I couldn't read. Then Vanessa was led away in handcuffs, and Riley squeezed my hand. 6 months later. Riley and I were sitting on the porch of a rental house in Asheville. It was smaller than our old home in Charlotte, but it was ours. A fresh start in a new city. Lisa Connolly was coming for dinner. She visited once a month now. The relationship between her and Riley was complicated, tentative, awkward, full of things neither of them knew how to say, but it was growing, slowly. Riley had decided to keep the name Riley. "It's who I've been my whole life," she said. "The name doesn't belong to them anymore. It belongs to me." She'd also decided, with help from a therapist, to write a letter to Vanessa in prison. I didn't read it. It wasn't my letter to read. But afterward, she seemed lighter, like she'd set down something heavy she'd been carrying. "Dad? Yeah? Do you ever regret finding out?" I thought about the question. The honest answer was complicated. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Sometimes I think about what my life would have been like if I'd never looked in that box, if I'd just stayed ignorant. Would that have been better? Easier, maybe. Not better." I looked at her. The truth is hard, but it's also the only thing you can actually build on. Everything else, comfortable lies, convenient fictions, sooner or later, it all falls apart. Foundation has to be solid. "Exactly," she smiled. "You're such an architect." Guilty. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun go down behind the mountains. "What about you?" I asked finally. And Any regrets? Riley considered. I regret that it had to happen the way it did. I wish someone had just told me years ago, before it became this huge disaster. Me too. But I don't regret knowing, however painful it was, however much it messed me up. She paused. I'd rather know who I really am than live someone else's life forever. That's very wise. I learned from the best. Lisa arrived at 7. She'd brought wine and a homemade casserole. She was learning to cook, she said, trying to make up for years of takeout and microwave dinners. We ate on the porch, talked about small things. Lisa's job, Riley's college applications. She was taking a gap year first, but planning to apply to schools in the spring. My new consulting business. After dinner, Riley and Lisa went for a walk. They did that now, long walks where they talked about things they couldn't say in front of me. I cleaned up, washed dishes, enjoyed the quiet. When they came back, Lisa's eyes were red, so were Riley's, but they were smiling. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah, Riley said. Just working through stuff. Good, that's good. Lisa left around 10. Hugged Riley for a long time. Shook my hand. Thank you, she said to me. For finding her, for telling her, for letting me be part of her life. She's your daughter too, I said. In a way. She deserves to know all the people who love her. Even after everything, especially after everything. That night, after Riley went to bed, I sat in my study and looked at the photograph I kept on my desk. It wasn't a picture of Riley. It was a picture of a baby I'd never known. Baby girl Ellison. The child who was supposed to be my daughter, who lived for 18 hours and then vanished, erased, replaced. I'd found her grave eventually. Presbyterian Hospital had a small cemetery for infants who died in their care. A quiet corner of a larger memorial park, shaded by oak trees. Her grave marker was tiny, just a name, the name they gave her before they took it away, and 2 dates. September 11th, 1998. September 12th, 1998. I visited when I could, brought flowers, sat with her. I didn't know if I believed in an afterlife, but I talked to her anyway, told her about her sister, the girl who carried her name now, told her about the truth and how we'd finally brought it into the light. Told her I was sorry. Sorry I hadn't been there. Sorry I hadn't known. Sorry I couldn't have protected her. If you're still here, if you've listened to this whole story, I want to leave you with something. Trust is the foundation of everything. Family, marriage, identity. Without trust, you're building on sand. But trust shouldn't be blind. Trust should be earned. And the people you trust, your spouse, your parents, your family, they should be willing to earn it. Every day. By being honest. By choosing truth over convenience. When they don't, when they choose to lie, to deceive, to build your life on fabrication, you have to be willing to tear it all down. Even when it hurts. Even when it means losing everything you thought you had. Because the only thing worse than discovering a lie is spending your whole life living inside one. My daughter, not my biological daughter, but my daughter in every way that matters, taught me that. She could have chosen comfort. She could have accepted the Ashfords' version of reality. She could have pretended the truth didn't matter. Instead, she chose courage. She chose herself. And she chose me. That's the greatest gift I've ever received. One more thing. If you're going through something similar, if there are secrets in your family, lies you've discovered or lies you suspect, I want to tell you something important. You're not alone. The truth is scary. Exposing it is harder. The consequences are unpredictable. But living in a lie is a kind of death, a slow erosion of everything real about yourself. You deserve the truth, whatever it costs, whatever it breaks. You deserve to know who you really are. Riley just texted me. She's applying to architecture school, she says. Wants to design buildings like her dad. Like her dad. I read those words 3 times. Then I put my phone down and looked out the window at the mountains. And I smiled, because whatever else happened, whatever pain, whatever loss, whatever destruction, I still have that. A daughter who calls me dad. A truth that can't be buried anymore. And a foundation, finally, that's solid. If this story moved you, if it made you think about trust and truth and what family really means, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're dealing with something similar, secrets, lies, the terrifying choice of whether to expose them, remember, the truth will set you free. It just might break everything else first. But that's okay. Broken things can be rebuilt. Lies can't. Thanks for listening.